Okay, we are going to take a super quick look at Texas literature. So we've got two words, odyssey and pseudonym. Now, an odyssey is a long, wandering journey filled with many adventures. A pseudonym is a fictitious name used by an author. So that's going to be your first question. Number one, what do you call a fictitious name used by an author? And then right here's your answer for number one. So you should have number one down and you should have wrote that down. And a pseudonym is a fictitious name for an author. So Ben Franklin, he always wrote under the name William Penn. And if you hear the word Penn as his last name, that's why he used that, because you know what a pen is. So it was actually his play on words because he liked to do play on words. So Ben Franklin's pseudonym was William Penn. That was his fake name he used for writing. Okay, let's take a look at 16th century literature. The very first book about Texas was called Relacion, published in 1542, so that was a long time ago. It was the account of Cabez de Vaca and his Odyssey, a long wandering adventure. So I need to reword that. In what year was the very first book wrote about Texas? So again, that question was, in what year was the very first book wrote about Texas? Let me make this a little larger because I think it's going to be easier to see. Question number one, what do you call a fictitious or false name that an author uses? Question number two, in what year was the first book about Texas written? Okay, 19th century nonfiction. Nonfiction means non-false, meaning that it's not false. So if it's not false, it's true. So let's take a look at this. During the 16 and 1700s, there were only a few minor works written about life in Texas by Catholic friars who tried to establish missions. So question number two is, who wrote the books about Texas in the 16 and 1700s? Who wrote the books about Texas in the 16 and 1700s? Catholic friars did. So number three should be Catholic friars. And I have to write this down myself. Catholic friars. Okay, so here's something that's from the book Relacion by De Vaca, and it's about how he stayed with some Indians. Because they worked me so hard and treated me so poorly, I decided to flee from them and go to those that lived in the forest in the mainland, a people called the Churruca. So then here's also something by Mary Austin Holly. So who is she? Let's take a look. The first nonfiction book about Texas was written in English. Nonfiction book about Texas was written in English, was penned by Mary Austin Holly, a cousin of Stephen F. Austin. When she came to visit Austin Colony, while she was there, she wrote many letters to her family and friends back east. So here's my next question, who was the cousin of Stephen F. Austin who wrote the first nonfiction book about Texas? The cousin of Stephen F. Austin, you can see I gave you a little help there in yellow. So yes, Mary Austin Holly was the cousin of Stephen F. Austin writing that first book. Now let's just come down here a little bit. So here's a little interesting thing. Another book with a really long title was written about Davy Crockett in 1836, not long after he had been killed at the Alamo. So many people talk about Davy Crockett. So Davy Crockett is a very famous book, and many books were written about different things that were happening at the time of the massacre at the Alamo. So my question would be, where was Davy Crockett killed? Where was Davy Crockett killed? Where was Crockett killed? The Alamo. Okay, so now we should be, I believe, on number 6. Let's take a quick peek and see. There's 1 pseudonym, 2 is 1542, 3 is Catholic friars, 4 is Mary Holly Austin, 5 is the Alamo. So now we're going on to 6. Many books were written about the Texas Revolution at the early days of the Texas statehood. One excellent example is Early Times in Texas, written by Duval. Early Times in Texas was a series of books between 1868 and 1871. It includes Meyer Expedition, his survival of the Black Bean episode, and even the adventures of Bigfoot Wallace. So I remember hearing about Bigfoot Wallace, but I don't remember what about. But my question to you is, when was Early Times written? Early Times was a series of books, and when was it written? 1868 to 1871. And it was the first series of books. So what was the first series of books in Texas called? Early Times. When was it written? From 1868 to 1871. Great. Okay. So the Diary of Buck Berry, a famous ranger, was turned into an autobiography, a Texas Ranger and frontiersman. Chili con Carne, Mustang Gray. There's a lot of things here, but I really don't want to give you too much to cover because we're trying to hurry. So I'm sorry, not that we're trying to hurry. We're trying to focus on the important things. So another popular cowboy book was called A Texas Cowboy, or 15 Years on the Hurricane Deck of a Spanish Pony. Interesting title, but it's interesting that hundreds of books were written about what? And this is your final question today. Hundreds of books were written about what? What are we known for in Texas? Our cowboys. So hundreds of books were written about Texas cowboys. And with that, you are done. Unit 10, Lesson 2. Have a great day. Good work.